Welcome. This is the Amateur Fanboy Podcast YouTube channel where we provide additional content for NFL year-round. So today I am working on a mock draft simulation. Basically, I'm just doing my mock draft through Pro Football Network's website. They have a great simulation tool. If you guys want to make your own, mock drafts, it's a great tool to use. So basically, I already have Trevor Lawrence. I didn't even realize that. But yeah, of course, Trevor Lawrence to the Jaguars. I think that's an easy, simple, yeah, he's going to the Jags. He's the best player in the draft, or at least the best quarterback in the draft. He has one of the most hyped quarterbacks I've seen in some time. I think he'll be fine. Going there with Urban Meyer should be an instant success here in a few seasons. Should be able to help that team, actually establish some sort of history, which they really don't have. So I think it's a great opportunity for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars to be able to compete in the AFC South. So with the Jets, this one's a little bit tougher because they have Sam Darnold, but there are some quarterback options. I'm still gonna buy into Zach Wilson to the Jets, even though I've thought of Justin Fields as an option just because he can be dynamic running the ball as well. He's a good thrower, but Zach Wilson, BYU, he's very similar to Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he's a Patrick Mahomes light. He can throw the ball in any which way with his hand, like the angles. He can get the ball down the field. He can still use his athleticism to extend plays and have, typically negative plays and extend it to a positive. He's not Lamar Jackson, of course. He's not that type of quarterback at all. But if he has to use his legs, he will. I think Josh Allen, he's not Josh Allen because he doesn't have the arms that Josh Allen has, and same Mahomes. But he is a decent arm. I think he's going into the Kyle Shanahan offense, which he kind of runs a very similar offense there at BYU. So it's a great place for him to be. But to be honest with you, they do need to continue to build offensive line, get some more weapons. This is a good receiver draft, so they have a pick later on in the draft. They should probably use to draft a receiver, a running back, some sort of skill that can help him succeed. And so moving on to the Dolphins, they have this pick because it's kind of a luxury. They moved on from Tunsil, and to me, you got to go get yourself, if you're going to stick with Tua and you're not going to draft a quarterback, you're going to have to provide him with some weapons. Jamar Chase, in my opinion, is the best receiver in the draft. There is a lot of, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great receivers here. Jalen Waddle and Mr. Smith, if you know, I don't pronounce his first name correctly, Devonta. So I'll just say Mr. Smith. That's my guy. But Jamar Chase, yeah, I think going with Tua, I'd like to see him, grow together and continue to build. They also have a pick later on, their actual pick. And again, if they can continue to provide Tua with more tools on offense, they can go offensive line, they can go running back. I'd like them to continue to build the offense so that, Tua is successful. He does need weapons. That team kind of lacks that weapons, or at least health-wise. So moving on to the Falcons, this one does I question if I should stick Justin Fields there or Trey Lance, but just because they have Matt Ryan, to me they're at least 1 year off from moving on from him. They could put Fields or Lance there and let him sit for a season, but at this point, I think you're paying Julio Jones a lot of money. You're paying Matt Ryan. You have Calvin Ridley there. They could go Kyle Pitts here, but in my opinion, just go get Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle. I know that they drafted a tackle a couple years back, and I think they can. He's the best player, the best offensive tackle. He's better than anything they have. They can move that tackle to guard, even though they did draft a guard as well at that in the first as well for your seasons. But I think that's a good place. Just continue to let Matt Ryan, be a good quarterback, nothing special or too. He's not going to be the MVP caliber he was a couple years ago, but I think you can still win with him. So with the Bengals, I would have loved for them to get Sewell here. I think they still got to go offensive tackle, and it's kind of maybe a little bit of a reach, but I'm going to go Slater at 5. I thought of maybe putting Pitts or one of the receivers there, but really maybe a trade back would be a good option for them. I'm not going to project any trades at this moment. This is just a fun, quick mock, top of the head. I'm not even I'm going off the top of my head, just having fun with it. This is basically, as of right now, before free agency, just trying to get any type of, just trying to get my mock draft before free agency, and things will change with that. But yeah, Slater, get the offensive tackle. Joe Burrow needs to be protected if he comes back as soon as hopefully week 1. But yeah, they got to continue to build the offensive line. And be honest with you, Slater could be the best tackle in the draft. He goes a good situation. He wouldn't surprise me at all. With the Eagles here, though, they have Hurts. I'm going to buy into that they're going to hold off a season. Again, I would have liked them to trade back at least to in the 9 to 12 area. I don't really want to draft a receiver here. They can. There are some good ones, and I think I'm going to go that way with Waddle. It was either offensive line, which I don't think there's an offensive tackle they can take here. I don't know what they're going to do with their offensive line. They have had a lot of injuries. I would like them to continue to. They spend a lot of money in the trenches, and they spend a lot of picks, high valued picks, offensive line and defensive line. But they really just need to continue to put weapons for Hurts. So that's why I'm going Jalen Waddle. You could go Devontae Smith. He would be fine there. I just think Waddle's the better player. I'm not going to take the Heisman into consideration as he's the best player, but I don't believe so. I think Waddle's the actual best player. If he wasn't hurt, I think he would have showcased more than Smith. So it makes it interesting with the Lions at 7. There is a couple quarterbacks left. If I could transition a quarterback trade up, yeah, this probably makes sense in these 5, 6, 7 spot, or even 4. But since we're not, I would love to put another weapon, Devontae Smith. And look, a lot has to do with what they end up doing with Golladay. If they franchise him, then of course I don't think they need to go to receiver route. But since I don't know how that's going to play out, I'm assuming that at this moment he might hit free agency. So I'm going to go get Devontae Smith. He is kind of similar to what they just signed in Tyrone Williams, who was with the Raiders, kind of a deep threat, but really you can't really count on him. He's been kind of injured his whole career, even with the Chargers. I think you just continue to put Goff, or you give Goff some more weapons, and hopefully you can create a winning culture. You could also go defense here, get one of these corners, but at this moment I don't really love anyone. You could go Micah Pearson, but I'll stick with that. So at 8, this is easy. If they don't get Deshaun Watson, the Panthers are going to draft a quarterback. They're more than likely going to move up for a quarterback, and Justin Fields would be a very fun quarterback in that offense. They have a lot of weapons. Robbie Anderson, they have McCaffrey. I can't even think of DJ, the other receiver at the moment, having a brain fart. But yeah, I think the owner is desperate for a franchise quarterback. Justin Fields can maybe be the quarterback that they hoped Cam Newton would continue to be, and maybe transition less with the running game and throw the ball a little more. Fields can do that, but he doesn't need to. It's kind of similar to the Zach Wilson. He can use his legs to get positive plays, where typically you get a negative play. But I think Justin Fields is going to continue to grow. Kind of reminds me of Deshaun Watson. And especially since I think he should be hyped up more, but because of certain circumstances, he's going to be kind of dropping a little bit. And I think if the Panthers get him at 8, it's a complete steal. But at 9, the Broncos, man, this is a tough one. I don't know what to exactly do. They could go corner here. They could go linebacker. Trey Lance is there. I just don't buy into Trey Lance to me, he needs to sit down at least half a season to a full season to be able to get on the field. I think there's just a lot unknown with him because he's only played 16 games. I think he's my favorite quarterback in the draft, but I just think at this moment you got to kind of develop Drew Lock for now and see what you have for them. I wouldn't hate it if it was Justin Fields, but for Trey Lance, I'd like for him to be in a great situation where he can sit. I think if you draft Trey Lance, he's going to start over Lock. That's just my opinion. He'll beat out Lock. He's a better player than Lock. Maybe that's why they go that route, but I'm actually gonna go with Patrick Surtain from Alabama. You know, they got rid of AJ Bouye. They really need, either a corner or a linebacker. In my opinion, they're gonna focus on the cornerback position and try to get that sorted with a young guy who can be potentially a top 5 corner in this league. So here it makes it interesting. The Cowboys. I don't know if you've listened to our podcast with Chase Aguirre. He's my partner on our podcast, and he hates the idea of drafting offensive tackle or an edge player. He thinks that you got to go corner, and so I'm gonna take what he's saying and kind of use that and go with Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech. I think him and Patrick Surtain are very similar players in terms of production and going into the NFL. The potentials, to be the best player, best corner in this draft can end up being a top 5 corner. I think you'll be fine either way. If you've noticed, I've kind of, I didn't realize what I just did, and this is just going off of, just going off of my head at this moment. I went back-to-back quarterbacks, 1 and 2, off back-to-back offensive tackles, at 4 and 5, back-to-back receivers, and then back-to-back corners. So didn't mean to do that, just how it played out. But the Giants are next. I mean, Micah Pearson just feels like a Giants player. They typically have pretty good linebackers in the history as well as a defensive line. There isn't really an edge guy that I love to go at this moment. This would be a place where I wouldn't hate for the Giants to move back and potentially get an edge down the line. But for here, Micah Parsons, I believe he opted out. I'm not really that knowledgeable on his end. I haven't really focused on the linebackers position. I'm a 49ers fan, so I typically follow the needs of my team. And, quarterbacks, of course. But from my understanding, all the hype that he is the top linebacker here. So I'll put him there for the Giants. But here comes the 49ers, and this makes things interesting. Look, Trey Lance is there. I think it's high probability that if they love him, they will take him there. They'll probably move up. If they love a quarterback, they will move up and draft a quarterback. I just, at this point, I'm going to go Trey Lance. I would have loved, this is the best. This is what I would love for them to do. Even if they move on from Jimmy Garoppolo and they rumored to be in talks with the Panthers, at least asking how much Teddy Bridgewater would cost. So I think he's the perfect quarterback to sit down for at least 6 games to a season, kind of do that Patrick Mahomes, let him sit, learn. Hopefully Teddy can provide him with some sort of, pros pro like Alex Smith did with Patrick Mahomes and kind of guide him to being the starter at some point, which you got to get Teddy on board for that. I'm not sure if he's willing to do that. That's a huge thing to do, especially to get replaced. He might start the season. So I think that's a good spot. I think Trey Lance and Kyle Shanahan's offense would be, a match made in heaven, very similar to how Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not projecting him to be Patrick Mahomes. They're not the same player. They are mobile. Trey has a decent arm, but he's not Patrick Mahomes. And yeah, so with that, I'll move on to the Chargers, and this is kind of easy. I personally think Kyle Pitts is the best player in the draft, and it's a steal. I want him to go earlier, but just things didn't work out. So the Chargers will take Kyle Pitts. He kind of reminds me of Calvin Johnson, but playing the tight end position. Maybe whatever team he drafts him will actually move into receiver. But I'm fine with that. I think it's a good spot with the Chargers if they do not re-sign. Have another brain fart, but their tight end that's a free agent, and he was on the franchise tag. And then the year prior, if I remember, he had torn his ACL. But yeah. I think you continue to, you have talent on defense. You just got to stay healthy. You could go offensive line here, but I'm fine with sticking with Kyle Pitts. Give another weapon to that offense. Should be fun to continue to see in progression there. So moving on to the Vikings, and that's it's kind of interesting here. They can go so many different ways. They've actually drafted fairly decent in the recent years. Justin Jefferson last year. So, I'm probably going to go. This is tough. I guess. This is a tough one. I'm having a hard time here. Let's go with Gregory Rousseau. They did move on from. There was the DN from the Jags that they traded for, and then they moved him to the Ravens. I mean, they did use their second round pick to get him, but that the edge position with Hunter, who didn't play last year, I believe he had a neck injury. I mean, that defense was terrible. That's typically why they were losing games early on in that season, and then that offense kind of took off and kind of helped having a terrible defense. But yeah, should be a pretty good fit there. Would love to see that. Typically the edges probably go around this. They might go a little earlier, but I'm fine with this at this point. And then going with the Patriots, man. That's a tough one because it just depends on what they do in free agency. I think Mac Jones is probably the guy that they take here. I think he definitely fits that offense in a positive way. I think it would be a good fit. Maybe they can grow with that. They need to continue to get weapons. I think Edelman is probably going to be a free agent, if I recall. They did have their tight end the receiver that they drafted a few years back, 2 seasons from Arizona State. But yeah, I think, hopefully they provide Mac Jones with some weapons if they can sign some guys in free agency. They could get a tight end. They need some receivers. You could probably go. Sony Michel hasn't been anything special in this league. And they can also draft defense. But Mac Jones is the pick. And so at 16, the Cardinals, I would like them to focus on the offensive line. And that's why I'm going to go with Christian Darcy. I think, hopefully Kyler Murray makes that next step. I think he can be an elite quarterback, or at least a very great one. I'm hoping that Cliff Kingsbury isn't the reason why that's holding that team back to making a playoff run. And they did sign J.J. Watt. They could go corner here, but I think I would like them to go offensive tackle because I think they should protect their franchise quarterback there. They haven't really done that, put a high pick at offensive line, so I'd like to see that. But here comes the Raiders, and this one's fairly easy. Let's go with that linebacker from Notre Dame. They haven't really drafted a linebacker early on to help that defense. That defense has problems, and I know that they have cut their offensive tackle, both guards, and Trent Brown might get cut if not traded. But I think they need to fix. I mean, that team's problem was not their offense; it was their defense. Go get a starting linebacker who can make an impact this year. And then this is where it starts getting a lot tougher. So we had Jamar Chase going to the Dolphins early on, and at 18, this is where I'd like them to continue to go offense. Najee Harris from Alabama, he's the best running back in the league. In the draft. They get the best receiver, get the best running back. Now you have some pieces on offense where you can hopefully put Tua in a situation where he could be successful. They could go offensive tackle here with Tucker from USC, but I'm gonna believe that they're gonna invest this offseason in offensive line in free agency and worry about the skill positions because they can find guys in the first, second, third round that are going to make huge impacts to this team. So at 19, we have the Washington football team. Not going to call them the R word because that's offensive. There's not a quarterback here I would take. I would have loved for them to go out and, potentially get one. Maybe they go into the market for Watson. Maybe they go in the market for Marcus Mariota or if Russell gets moved, but Russell has not said that he would like to play for this organization. They have pieces. I think they have a good defense who have potentially can become great. They probably should work on their offensive line. I'm going to go Tucker from USC. It's kind of hard to project without knowing who their quarterback is. Like, of course, if they if they trade for Marcus Mariota, I would hope that they would be active in being able to move up in the draft and potentially get maybe Trey Lance or Fields. Their owner's even though he's one of the worst owners in the league, and hopefully the NFL forces him to sell, but he hasn't been. How do I say this? He has always been big on gambling, on big contracts, making big moves. So it wouldn't surprise me if this team goes and gets a quarterback in the top 10 and, moves a first round next year if they believe this team is talented enough to make a playoff, if they have that talent at the quarterback position. So, but again, offensive tackle, they can always improve their offensive line. So here's the Bears. And again, this same situation. I don't know what to do with the quarterback position. I would like them to move up. Maybe they get Watson. Same situation with all those quarterbacks with the Washington football team. It's really like is there a receiver that I'm thinking about? Bateman's not bad. Tooney's not bad. It's all right. The Bears, they could go corner here. They don't need really a linebacker edge. Their offensive line's all right. They could probably improve it a little bit. Montgomery's he's above average, I guess, at running back. So I think I'm going to go Horn here. From my understanding, the position of need on defense is that corner position. I think they cut their corner, who's fairly small. I can't think of his name, but I can't think of a lot of names in this video. And then moving on to the Colts, they have Wentz. They have a lot of talent on offense. They could go offensive tackle. If I recall, their left tackle did retire. I'm going to assume they have money, so they could go out and just sign a guy. They could probably, in my opinion, go just best player. I'm trying to think quickly. They don't have an elite guy at the edge position. I don't even know if they have a good guy. I know they have DeForest Buckner, but he's a defensive tackle, and he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league. It just depends. Like, T.Y. Hilton is a free agent. They did draft Paris Campbell 2 seasons ago in the draft. I believe in the second, might have been the third round, and then they got Michael Pittman Jr. In the second last year, fairly early on. Let's see. And they have some decent corners. Yeah, let's go Payne from Michigan. He's just the best player available. And they typically just get the best players. This is probably a trade back. They always seem to trade back from the first into the second or late first, and then draft guys in the second that they can, count on right away, early second. So here's the Titans, and man, their defense fell apart last season. They did draft an offensive tackle last year, and he has just been, he's very immature, very, I'm not sure. He's probably gone, and I'll probably go Mayfield from Michigan, offensive tackle. I think they cut their first-round pick, just, you kind of want to build the offensive line, and you kind of wasted a pick on him. Just move on. And so moving on to the Jets, they get Zach Wilson at 2. I'm not biggest fan on Travis Etienne. I can't even say his last name. Sorry. He's nothing special to me. He can catch out of the backfield, but he's not great with his hands. He has great speed. I'm not really loving that position. And, let's see what the other running backs. They could probably I think they can get a running back in the second or third who can make a major impact more than the other positions available. That I'm gonna go Tooney from Florida. I think they definitely just continue to build weapons. They could go offensive tackle, but because they have a pretty good left tackle who they drafted in the first last year. He was probably the only positive thing about that team this season or this past season without his injuries. So continue to just build weapons for Zach Wilson. And the Steelers here at 24 make things interesting. They are going to go with Big Ben this season. He changed his contract. Kellen Mond, they seem to like athletic quarterbacks. He kind of reminds me of Dak Prescott. Could they reach on Mond here? Maybe it's a trade back and maybe get him a little later, but let me just see what other potential options there are. They probably could go receiver. They did draft the past few years some guys. Juju is a free agent. I don't really expect him to be back. This is probably where I'm going to go Travis Etienne from Clemson. And yeah, I'm okay with that. Nothing too special. They're going to try to run the ball and use the running backs in passing games. They did transition from Matt Canada, who's their offensive coordinator now. I believe, was their quarterback coach a season ago. And then before that, he was in college. He's going to put a very innovative college offense. So having a running back who can catch out of the backfield and run the ball will be something, especially James Conner, who I believe is a free agent. And the Jags here, there is pieces on that team. I wouldn't be surprised if they move this pick and they go get the right tackle from the Ravens, who wants to play on the left side because he probably wants to get paid like a left tackle, not like a right tackle, because it's quite a difference in pay. But yeah, so for now, I think I'm gonna call Samuel Cosme from Texas, offensive tackle. You go get Lawrence, go get him a tackle. They do have a big tackle at left tackle that they drafted a few seasons back, but continue to build the offensive line. And that defense just needs to develop, really. They have pieces, they're just very young. And then the Browns here. The Browns, it's kind of a tough place. They could go linebacker, they could go edge. I'm okay with their offensive line. They can go with tackle. There's a guy here. Receiver, just depends on what they do with Odell, right? So Odell is probably somebody who, I'm okay with them moving on. Maybe Bateman will be a guy there that they target to replace Odell. I think the team's better without Odell, sadly. And here comes the Ravens. And this one, it's tough because they probably should draft a receiver, or maybe actually go out and get a veteran receiver who has some high talent for that offense. This is a tough one. Maybe they go get their safety from TCU. He from my understanding, he's probably going to be a riser in the draft, but if he's there, he'd be a Trayvon. He would be a good pick for that team. He can, cover. He can hit. He can play the run. Typically, these safeties now have to be able to play down the field as well as tackle and play against the run. They're typically a little smaller, but from my understanding, he's very similar to Harrison Smith from the Vikings. So that would be a good place for him there. And here comes the Saints. Really, they should just pick the best player available. they're going to transition. This team's going to look a lot different than it did a year ago. I think Jameis or Taysom Hill, whoever wins that quarterback job, I'd like to just continue to put weapons, and they're going to go get a tight end. They did cut both their tight ends. I know they have the tight end they traded with from the Bears a year ago, but that dude can never stay healthy. And then the Packers here, and really, is there a receiver available? Not really. This is probably a trade back. They could go offensive line or defense. Let's see. I'm going to go corner. They have spent a lot on that cornerback position in the past, but, one side's a pretty good corner, and then, what's his name? I can't think of him. He's terrible. He's a free agent, but, yeah, they're going to change and develop and draft a corner here and continue to build that defense. And here comes the Bills. Man, their defense fell off last year. I don't know what it was. They have they have one of the better corners in the league. They have a young stud at the defensive tackle position, but it's been not very. They need to spend some money or some high picks on an edge player. They just didn't get that production that they were hoping to. So the Chiefs here, and this is where it makes it interesting. They probably should go and put more either draft capital or money into providing depth for that offensive line. They're going to start having some issues here soon with cap space and things like that. Trying to think. They have Chris. Let's see. I'm trying to think what to put here. They could probably go. They need a linebacker for sure. I do know that. So I'm gonna go Collins from Tulsa. I think. I'm not sure. At that point, I'm not knowledgeable at the linebacker position that you've heard previously. So it's not a position of need for my team. So I typically don't pay attention to it. I'm just going off of the rankings here. So hopefully, I know that Chiefs do need a linebacker. So hopefully they replace that position. And we got the Bucks here. They could go looking at developing a quarterback. They could go at looking at that running back position. Fournette is a free agent, and then there I can't even think of his name. The other running back that came out of USC. He was fairly good. Still had some fumbling problems. Not a guy that I think they could draft here. It just depends what they do at their edge positions. JPP, and then they have Shaq Barrett at that edge position, who's a free agent. This team they can just go best player available, really. They don't really have too many holes. I'm going to go, Christian Barmore from Alabama. He is, should have gone a lot sooner. Of course, that Alabama defensive line always, high quality players in the NFL. So with that, we have concluded the first round of this mock. This is all I'm doing. I'm not doing a second round. So I just want to. I think this is a little weird with the quarterbacks. That could potentially happen. Falcons, they can go in a different way. They can go. What's his name? They can go Kyle Pitts. That's the guy who I think they could potentially go. If I had to grade this, and again, this is just on the spot. I'm just kind of having a good fun time here. I'm okay with this draft. I will provide a more in-depth on the, provide with some research down the road with more and more mocks. This is just a fun mock, but please check us out. We have a podcast. We provide some good content. It's a lot with my co-host Chase Aguirre. We have some great content coming together, and we're going to continue to post on YouTube and all that. With that, I appreciate it. Again, check us out at Amateur Fan Pod, our Twitter handle. You can follow us there. My name is Mike, and you can follow me as well on Twitter, or Charles Blue. And then you can also look up our podcast. We are on Spotify. We are on all these, every podcast. Basically, Amateur Fanboy Podcast is the name. So with that, thank you, and have a great day.